Greetings, everybody, and welcome to Midnight's Edge. My name is Thomas Connors. I'm going to go by Thomas today because we have a very special guest with us named Tom Konkle. Welcome, sir.
Oh, thank you for having me back. It's good to see you guys.
It's a blast to have you. And also with us, of course, is the boss man, Andre.
Greetings, everyone. Thanks for joining us. And also, Tom Konkle, thanks for joining us again. It will be very good to have an industry professional for this particular episode, where we're going to go through loads of rumors and conjecture. So it's going to be great to run them with someone who's in a position to, if not know the specifics of this situation, comment on the generalities of what is usually the case between such rumors. And joining us is also Robot Shlomo, Narrator Supreme.
How you doing? Tom Konkle, first time meeting you. Glad to be here.
He's been on some of your favorite shows, Rob, by the way.
Cosmos. You said Cosmos before.
He's been in Community.
Cosmos.
He's been in
Community. Love Community.
A few other shows too you liked.
The rest
now I got to go through all 5 seasons of my Community DVDs and try to find you.
I'm a character named Paradox in an episode. I think it's the one with the paintballs. So
there you go.
Oh my God, those are my favorite ones.
Yeah, Joe Mchale is an old friend of mine. We used to audition together for commercials. He would actually watch my kid. So he gave me a big hug when I got on the show. The casting director from that show had done Arrested Development, which I was on, and I was originally in the running to be in the American version of The Office. So the same casting director kept bringing me back and bouncing me into these different little guest role stuff and everything. So it was fun to see friends again, and be part of a show that I really liked.
Yeah. I'm also a big fan of Joe Mchale. I mean, he's a terrific actor.
Fantastic. He's been a friend of mine for it's got to be almost 17 years now.
I'm sure he's told you a story about how the cop let him out of the ticket when he saw you at the Rose Bowl ring.
Yeah.
Tom Konkle has a very, very impressive resume, just got to say, and we are deeply honored to have you here. And of course, in later streams, we'll be going through your past and your current work in much, much more detail. For right now, though, the topic is, of course, Star Trek, unless you want to promote your most recent feature film, which I'm sure you can also show on screen for everyone watching.
Let's take a look. I can bring up the poster here if I do that. No, I can't do that. The film, that's not the film. That's a different film. The movie is called Noise in the Middle, and it is a thriller coming out on October 29th, and then it will be on all the platforms after that. It was fun because it was shot up in Spokane. And it is a genre film, but it's a little bit of a genre bending film because it's basically about a man who is haunted through his autistic daughter, who may or may not have a connection to their dead mother. And it's a really kind of creepy, old school horror film. So please check that out. It was a lot of fun.
Well, we'll be sure to do, and everyone out there watching, you should watch it as well. Speaking of everyone watching, cheers to you. We have quite the international audience. We have Diego Flores, straight from Poland. We have Piotr Koster-Seva, Unlikely Spore 1, Hey Coffee Ice, Phil Cora, and many, many others. It's a pleasure to have you all here. And Lillian Borg, you sound like you're pretty close to me, so that's awesome. But let's get on with the show, Star Trek, because basically there is a lot going on behind the scenes right now, and there's also a lot of misinformation, which makes it more challenging than usual to piece together exactly what is going on, isn't it, Thomas?
Oh, yes. This is something we've been trying to do for a little while. Needless to say, there is a lot going on behind the scenes. We've been trying to sort it all out. I think we kind of have a good idea of what's going on now. Of course, we're going to bounce some ideas off of our distinguished guest here to kind of get his take on a few things that we may not exactly have all of the information on. But needless to say, I think we're confident enough now that we have plenty of info for you guys that you're going to be, I would say, surprised. Some may be disappointed. Some may be a bit. You may be happy when we're done, but we'll see here. We'll get into this. I think the main thing to start with, let's start right off the bat, because we kind of got scooped on this a little bit by our good friends over at Bounding Into Comics and a few other places, but we're not going to complain about that. But you may have heard some rumors going around about a certain character returning to the Star Trek universe for what would be the fourth time now.
Yeah. It's part of the, for me, it's one of the endemic problems with Star Trek is for a show that's supposed to explore strange new worlds, they do tend to keep revisiting the same patch of space. And the Dev Patel rumor as Khan is the most recent rumor. There was a long in development, you probably know about this, the SETI Alpha 5 miniseries that one of my favorite Star Trek creators, Nicholas Meyer, was working on in parallel with what ended up being Discovery and some of the other new shows like Picard. But he has his own camp and his own interests. But that seems to have evolved into whatever this new miniseries is. And for me, there's something that is what I call narratively inert. And what I mean by that is the danger of prequels or exploring a certain area is if you have a doomed character, if you have a character, you know their ultimate result, will be their death, or that the most interesting part of their life, a la, Han Solo, and the most interesting part of his life, of course, was helping Luke destroy the Death Star. So any visitation of him before that would have to be something less interesting, or at least less important in his life, or we wouldn't be telling that original story. And in the case of Khan, knowing where he ends up and his intersection with Kirk and his revenge, the story narratively is somewhat inert because we know his history, we know where he is. So unless you have something amazingly compelling to say to bring us up to it, it is another instance where rather than Star Trek being either forward-looking into new territory narratively while retaining that classic feel, or worse, rather than revisit beloved characters and recasting or remaking them, or worse, rewriting canon, the Dev Patel development is concerning only because the first thing that all of us think is we know his story.
That's part of it. And before we get ahead of ourselves a little bit, because that's kind of the big portion of this news is years ago, believe it or not, Andre.
Time flies.
When I talked to Nicholas Meyer, the man himself, we talked a little bit about this SETI Alpha 5 miniseries, which is something we had reported on before that, and he had confirmed its existence. Mm-hmm. But then all of a sudden, a couple weeks ago, our good friend Robert Meyer Burnett was talking about said script, SETI Alpha 5, because he was under the impression it's been long enough. Myers is out of the picture. This isn't happening. Right. He talked about the script. He may have even read a few excerpts from it, if I remember correctly. And his stream got claimed, and he got a nasty letter from someone. We can't say who per se, but he got a letter from someone involved with Star Trek. Let's say that.
Yeah.
And they were not too happy with Mr. Burnett.
It's great that they're at least listening. Hey, they're listening.
Yeah, it kind of caught him off guard. Well, so that kind of set us down a little rabbit hole of trying to figure out what's going on. And then in the last 2 weeks, I have uncovered some interesting things. And they go right along with this casting news that we just got recently in the last few days that we're hearing is probably pretty dead on. And the reason I say this is there is a series or a movie that is being prepped and casted called Odyssey of Khan. But the funny thing,
the miniseries, I believe.
It's a miniseries from what we've heard. But the funny thing about it is we have a very reliable source, a very, very reliable source with direct connections to this, who says that Nicholas Meyer nor Alex Kurtzman have anything to do with this Khan miniseries.
You know, I would not be surprised. One thing that Midnight Edge did really well is you did the sort of retrospective of the divide in the history between CBS less movies versus Paramount over the Star Trek property, which frankly has been detrimental to the property, as I think we can all agree, for decades. Yes.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
It's the worst thing that's happened to Star Trek.
I would have to agree. And the problem is when corporate considerations like that come in, I know friends very closely involved with Star Trek that listen to the Fandom Menace, that listen to Midnight Edge, listen to this, who share my frustrations, because those are your bosses. And you want to work, you want to create within Star Trek. It's the to quote Wrath of Khan, the best of times, the worst of times is getting a show right now in the Star Trek universe, because it's like, yes, I'm making a Star Trek show. Oh no, I have all these considerations of 20, a certain percentage must be different. I have to, am I in the Kelvin universe? All these other things. So you really see the position a lot of people are in. I am hopeful Emma Watts, who is the new film chief at Paramount and whose eye has turned almost single-mindedly to Star Trek, because if we look at the big picture with Paramount, it's a fascinating story. Paramount has almost no franchises. They have almost no tent poles. They could easily be acquired as a studio, which is a travesty, because they're one of the old guard. They have such a great history, but let's face it, Paramount has not had something come out of the gate other than Mission Impossible for some time. And even Mission Impossible, the IP itself and the negative, etc., again, has its fingers with JJ, and Tom Cruise owns all the projects that he does. So really, it's not much of an asset for Paramount. Paramount gets it secondhand. They're basically licensing it.
Well, I was also under the understanding with Mission Impossible, it had the same problem that Star Trek did, and that was that the television show and the movies were under two separate entities.
Yes, yeah, they are. And I love what Christopher McQuarrie is doing with it, and I think he's creating at a very high level. But I think Paramount as a studio has been bereft for a while, and I think the original, Star Trek series and the original movies and Next Generation, those were kind of jewels in the crown for them, and for them not to be even brought up at all when you talk about Paramount's assets or acquisitions. Emma Watts has a real mandate to figure out how do you restart this, which might be where your rumor of the lack of the involvement of the usual team in this new Khan project might be coming from. The oversight might come from her or someone she assigns to it, because she used to manage franchises as another company. I believe it was Fox. And yes, okay, great. And I don't know her personal taste, as far as the aesthetic of Star Trek, but they really do need to find someone who understands the fundamentals of Star Trek and gets it back to, the Federation's not the villain. It's hopeful, it's optimistic. It needs to be an aspirational series, but also it needs to be made by people that like Star Trek. Mm-hmm. And we've drifted so far from that original mandate. It's like anything. You play telephone, you go around the circle, and when it gets back to you, it's not at all resembling what the message was that you originally sent. Right. And until there is a strong hand in play, there will be this tonal shift and tonal differences. Mm-hmm. I'm watching with interest, and I certainly have friends in the business that are kickstarting projects, and also the spin-offs from Discovery, and I know they're Star Trek fans. If they're allowed to do what they want to do, you could see some real course correction coming up. But if they still are given that white paper, from corporate, or if they're constrained with all of the sub deals and all the back dealings about the property, then it does bring into question why you would make something that was already hamstrung before you began it.
Yeah, and we do have a lot to get into with the whole Trek news. This is just one small part of it. I do want to. Disruptive Innovator says Paramount has Sonic. Actually, that's a license deal with Sega, right, Andre?
Yes, that's a licensing. They do not own Sonic. They only have a licensing deal with Sega, which is pretty awesome because Sonic was a hit. So that means that you're going to get Sonic 2, and if they're really smart, they can get Golden Axe and all the other Sega properties.
And that's the same thing with Hasbro too. That's just a licensing deal. They do own Ninja Turtles, they do own SpongeBob, but those are probably the only two big properties besides Trek, Mission Impossible that they really do own. Well, they have like Jack Ryan, I think, other than that too, but that's it.
Well, yeah, and Jack Ryan's just stalled as a movie. Yeah, as a movie series. Yeah.
One of the things that I wanted to bring up with Tom was that we said you don't know what Emma Watts's tastes are, but more important than that, I mean, as long as she understands and respects the property, that's the most important part, and doesn't try to turn it into, as we've seen with Star Trek Discovery, Game of Thrones in space, and Picard, the Next Generation apology tour. It's just gotten so far away. I mean, I don't know Emma Watts personally. I never met her. I've only heard her name recently. Well, you know what? At this point, I think I'm willing to roll the dice on her as far as Star Trek is concerned.
Yeah, I think anyone who announces when they ascend to the job, when they say, "Hey, my first priority is to figure out what we can do about Star Trek," that's a good sign that they still consider it something viable. Perhaps they're a fan. I don't know. But as a creative person, as a filmmaker, I dusted off even my own hopeful Star Trek idea and thought, you know what? If they clean house and really, make a priority at Paramount of making good Star Trek properties, it will attract the right kinds of projects, the right kind of people, because trust me, they are out there. We have coffee together a lot and talk about what we could do. My producing partner is a huge Star Trek fan, and we mapped out, we were like, what if we could set something in this period that has never been explored and never been done? And we started realizing that we had maybe 20 ideas for episodes that were completely within that classic vein, didn't, have like the social justice warrior thing. They didn't have the Federation as the villain. At the end of the day, Star Trek was about bringing the ideals of humanity with all of our flaws into other realms and creating these little morality plays, these little stories that would have adventure, illuminate, but at the end of the day, they also had a little bit, they were about something, which is why they lasted. If you watch them, the reason they're timeless is the same reason the original Twilight Zone was timeless. You could watch the Doomsday Machine, and at the end of the day, it really was about something. It was about the idea of, a weapon to end all wars and what would happen, but it also had the adventure. It had everything you would want in a series that they seem to have lost the feeling of hopefulness. It's all grimdark, and that's not Star Trek. It's basically using the Star Trek name to make a completely different universe with completely different value systems. And the fans hate that.
And a challenge with that is also that I'm getting feedback there. Tom, can you put on headsets maybe? I think it's maybe from you.
From me? Sure.
Yeah, I don't know. But in either way. There it helped. Because an issue is that Secret Hideout used to be the gatekeeper for all things Star Trek on TV, and now, is my understanding, also on film. So you have the talent out there, both in your circle, but also beyond it. So finding the right people and the right pitches and everything, that's not the problem. The problem is that you've had the wrong gatekeepers.
Yeah. Yes.
And that may be about to change now, because Tom, let's move on with that.
I was going to say, the interesting thing we're finding here is, well, I should say lack of Kurtzman. As we heard, he's not involved in the Khan series or miniseries. So those who are just joining us, the news we started off with, there is a rumored Khan series. It's pretty much we can't say confirmed, but it's pretty much happening. They have a possible con already in, what was his name? Dev
Patel.
Patel.
Yeah.
Dev Patel. And oddly enough, we're also hearing that Kurtzman nor Nicholas Meyer has anything to do with this, but we may have an idea whom, and we'll get into that here now in just a second. Because if you may have noticed, as Andre put up, there's been a lot of, well, to use a quote, fake news running around about Star Trek, right, Andre?
Yes, absolutely.
And for some reason, these people decide to do this just to try and mess with people like us and Doomcock and Gary over at Nerdrotic and so on. And the funny thing about it is it never takes us much to really discredit them.
Right.
But sometimes what they end up doing is turning us on to information that we did not know about or may not have seen it first. So in some of their, I don't know what you want to call it, ruse, we happen to find nuggets of truth sometimes, or at least it leads us down paths
In
to
their,
find
in their misinformation, yeah.
their misinformation. Yeah. So yeah, the big thing was, season 4 of Discovery is happening. We can say that IATSE does confirm that season 4 of Discovery does go into production tentatively in 1 month from now, from yesterday actually, and we'll shoot till June. Alex Kurtzman's name is not listed as one of the producers. And another odd thing is Strange New Worlds is not set to start filming until next February. And he is also not listed as a producer on there. Now, the funny thing about Strange New Worlds is we're hearing a little bit of info on that too. Andre, do we want to really, should we say who's possibly running the show on that one?
Well, we can do that afterwards, but first to get into Star Trek Discovery season 4.
Yeah, let's do that first.
That's a great example of misinformation, because there you have had like pictures of actors this way, and like pictures that claim to be from the set in Pinewood, Toronto. And how real were those? That I do not know, because apparently some people said that wasn't from the front entrance, that was from the back entrance.
I'll tell you one better, because I don't know if you're privy to this, but we had an individual send us pictures.
Yes.
And they said they got yelled at for taking said pictures.
Interesting.
And after they got yelled at for taking said pictures, they got into a little bit of a conversation with the security guard, and they asked them, has there ever been in the recent weeks or ever a sandwich board saying this way for Star Trek Discovery or anything like that? And the guy's like, no, we've never had anything like that.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So again, it just
Well, with COVID as both an excuse and a reason, one of the things we just talked about before the show was they could be doing acquisition of locations for Discovery without actually using the actors, because it's becoming more and more necessary because of COVID protocols to create environments in the studio so that you can basically quarantine your actors. And if you need them to be outside in the forest or you need them to be out in the desert, there is a mad scramble to create a virtual studio situation. So it is possible that there's also the acquisition of plates that actors and things will be dropped into. If the writing process is ongoing for season 4, they may be kind of doing look and development on what's possible. You know, can we have them go to a place? You know, can they land on a planet? Do we have these locations? Can we secure it? And the smallest footprint would be to have what is known as the second unit, which is basically the camera unit without any of the actors, shooting around this and banking the assets for later if the show goes. Now, you know, they're probably also doing test balloons through PR to find out what level of interest there is. Like, hey, let's mention that we might do this con series, and if it just lands with a thud, then they may not proceed, or they may look at what's the level of interest in having so-and-so, you know, create their own series and spin it off, and then they're gauging the level of interest before they allocate more budget to it. Because look how Discovery did when it went on to regular television. It didn't do anything what they thought it would do.
I have the ratings here. We can get back to that in a second, because that's
Absolutely.
actually very disgusting, or interesting. So we can get back to that. It's disgusting too, but yeah, that's neither here nor there.
Oh, now you killed the conversation there.
Yeah. Sorry about that.
But no, so like, here's the thing with Discovery is we've heard from the start that they had a 5-year deal with Netflix, right, Andre?
Certainly a long-term deal with Netflix, which may have been for 5 years, and then we heard that they went into arbitration because Netflix wanted out, because they were really displeased with what they were paying compared to the increase in subscriptions that they got. They felt that that what they got from Secret Hideout and CBS was not the product that they were promised. They expected a crowd pleaser that would bring in audiences that Star Trek fans would love, and clearly that's not what happened. So they weren't happy with that. And then we heard consistently that they had kind of like won that arbitration, so that season 3 would be the last. And then we have also heard conflicting things of some kind of limited season 4, or a movie build as season 4 to round it all off, or something. I honestly do not know. The last thing that I heard about is that what was filmed in Canada right now is second unit only, as you were saying, Tom. And then it came to an abrupt suspension. All of a sudden, it just got shut down very quickly. And also no American actors were there because they can't cross the border to Canada. Correct. So there is a great deal of misinformation about that season 4 thing, and exactly what the truth of it, I don't know.
Yeah, they may be banking on Strange New Worlds as a return to form, hopefully. I don't know how much oversight there is, but you're right. I think there is a lot of chaos in the current properties, as you had discussed before, the problems with Picard, but also even just his age and things. There's not a long-term viability there, and certainly the show, in my opinion, didn't do what I wanted it to do, which was, basically be some sort of sequel to The Next Generation. Instead, it went off, and just browbeat the Picard character and then sidelined him in his own story. And I think that is endemic with everything that's coming out. If perhaps because Paramount and CBS have started a dialogue about, well, what do we do about Star Trek? I am hoping that a visionary of some kind comes in that loves Star Trek and cleans house.
Yeah, and that's kind of what we're hearing, is there's a big shift going on. And Gary from Nerdrotic said it right on Friday Night Tights a couple weeks ago, that he had heard similarly that Kurtzman left, cleaned his office out, then returned, but didn't do anything. So nobody knows why, what, where, when, what for. But now we're starting to get a little bit more of a bigger picture here, because to take us back a couple weeks when they first announced Paramount Plus, which will be rolling out internationally in a few countries and here as well, and it's kind of taking over CBS All Access, which was pretty much a failure. And in all the announcements, not once do they mention Star Trek. None of the series that Kurtzman has been attached to are anywhere to be found. Clarice is nowhere to be found. The Man Who Fell to Earth. Now, Clarice was meant to be for CBS, but it still has not started filming, to my knowledge. And it really seems funny that Kurtzman just kind of seems to be nowhere to be found on anything lately. Now, we're not saying he's completely out the door. What we are saying is there's been a shift of some kind, but we do have an idea of who may be in charge. And do we want to get into that now, Andre, or did you want to get into the ratings first?
Well, we can, let's do who we think may be, or who you think may be in charge, and we can do the ratings after.
Well, at first I was thinking it may have been this individual who's listed as the producer on Strange New Worlds and Discovery Season 4 on IATSE, but then another name that kept coming up is a name that we already know very well, and sadly we dread, but this may show that they're making some kind of change. We've been hearing a very strong rumor, I guess is the best way to put it, that Akiva Goldsman is the one who's spearheading Strange New Worlds. What do you guys think about that? Let's start with Andre.
It's very interesting. I would not be surprised. But in a way, it leaves me with more questions than answers. Because here's like the thing: the issue isn't just it's not just the individual in Alex Kurtzman. It's Secret Hideout as a whole. Because no matter who's running the show, he will have influence merely by way of Secret Hideout, since he's the CEO of it. So I would prefer that entire company to be gone. With Akiva Goldsman, I mean, is he any better than Kurtzman? I do not know. Or actually, if he is better, he's not much better. I mean, his catalog is also very, very mixed, to put it lightly. So I wouldn't be too relieved for that. I mean, it won't be any worse than Kurtzman for sure, but will it be sufficiently much better? I don't know.
And the question too is, I have some friends that are working on Strange New Worlds, and it was Akiva's baby to spin that off. Like, that was always the sort of final hope, was that in creating those characters within the bubble of Discovery, it was really kind of a proof of concept that this dynamic could work, that you could return hopefully to a more optimistic episodic style of Star Trek. Those were the two things that I kept hearing as well, was that you won't have a previously on Star Trek, that you need to recap, that a lot of it will be that even though the characters might learn something and grow, they are not adopting that sort of, serialized Game of Thrones feeling with these, that they're making them much more self-contained. And I would hope optimistic. The problem always with this is, again, you're going through something where you have a character like Pike, you know how he's going to end up. So unless you write something brilliant, my approach would be, I would write something brilliant where it's a character who basically, if he knows how he's going to end up, if he's gotten a glimpse, or we know where he's going to be, well, he's an interesting character in that he perhaps knows his future, or he's a doomed character because we know his future, which makes him more fearless or makes him live his life more fully. There's something that you can do to explore it. And as we know, the number one character was originally the intellect that was to be put into Spock when they got a second order for a pilot. They said, no, we don't want a woman in that position doing that, and she's too cold. So they moved a lot of that over to Spock. Well, now we see it fractured back to its original character. It's the longest pilot to order series ever. It's like 40, or was it 52 years ago, there was a pilot called The Cage, and now we're going to make a series, more than 50 years later. And it would be perhaps difficult, but not impossible, to find strange new worlds to explore and not cover territory that the original Star Trek or any of the following Star Treks did. And for me, that's the real problem, is if you're going to choose that time period, not too much can happen that we know about. And you know what I mean? There can't be Romulan, there can't be this or that. So they truly need to go to strange new worlds and hopefully have canon restored, because this needs to be a hopeful thing where the Federation is not trying to destroy itself or destroy the main characters, or the Federation is not the problem. So as an artist or as a filmmaker, if I accepted that challenge, I would need a high degree of creative freedom to create new races, to create new planets, to have the production design reflective of something that fits more comfortably into the classic Trek and the classic Trek values that Roddenberry originally, imbued in the series. Otherwise, it makes no sense to visit the years that lead up to it.
They always seem to come back to A plus B equals X, though.
Yeah,
they which is a weird, this weird thing, because we saw, as we've seen in Star Trek Discovery, The reason why Spock is with Kirk is because Michael Burnham said to go out and find him. I'm like, no, that's not the reason why. Spock kind of came with the ship, I mean, he was, but
Yeah.
I've had this theory though about why they keep coming back to the cage. This whole era of Star Trek keeps being centered upon the cage. I have this theory. It's because if you go on the Netflix menu for Star Trek, the cage is listed first as the pilot. and it's like, well, we've done our research. See, we watched the first episode. No, you didn't.
Yeah.
I'm like, that was rejected. There's a reason why.
Well, and didn't Akiva kind of take over for Picard too, if my memory serves
he
right,
did.
Andre?
Yeah,
He did. He's the guy.
So this is
He did, yeah.
yeah. So this all kind of keeps pointing towards Akiva Goldsman kind of taking over. Now, we're not saying that's what happened, but it really seems to be the case here. Akiva has no professional ties to like Secret Hideout or anything like that outside of being involved in this. So it could very well be that Secret Hideout has kind of been pushed out of the mix. And again, this is just me spitballing, throwing ideas out there. This is not any part of the report. What do you guys think about if that's the case? Because if that does kind of line up with everything we keep hearing is like he left, Akiva's kind of taking over with the new reunification with Star Trek. They keep basically, Tom, you just said it yourself. They keep saying the same thing. They're obviously admitting defeat through every time they say, well, we're going to course correct and we're going to do this and we're going to do that to try and get the fans back. And, even though they try to say that they're fine, nothing to see here. And, even though there's a burning building behind them, every time they say something like that, that's a clear admission that they know something's wrong.
Yeah.
I don't know if I have faith in Akiva either, but to me, at least, it sounds like they're trying to make a change.
I agree that they're probably trying to make a change, but I don't know that it's going to be enough.
Well, they don't.
Because, yeah, that's true. Akiva Goldsman, he is not part of Secret Hideout, but he has been there since day one, working with Secret Hideout. He's been working very closely with Kurtzman on Discovery as early as in the pilot. So basically, he is completely on board with what Kurtzman has been doing. And as long as he is there, I think that he is there to continue Kurtzman Trek. And I also think that him being there points to Secret Hideout still being there, even though Alex Kurtzman, as we have reported before, has been removed from creative responsibilities, but he still has like executive producer powers, so simply by way of being there in production company Secret Hideout. I don't think that he's going to be gone until the contract expires or they're bought out or arbitration or something like that. And if Paramount are able to get rid of them, then I think that they will get rid of Akiva Goldsman too, because he's just too tied to Kurtzman.
Can I bring up one scenario, though, here that's a plausibility? Do you guys remember when Prince changed his name?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you guys remember why he changed his name?
Because he wanted that weird little squiggly thing to...
No, Rob, you should know the answer to this.
Because he's an idiot?
No, because he wanted to change his contract with Warner Brothers.
Okay.
And the only way he could get around that whole ordeal, and because they wouldn't renegotiate with him, was to legally change his name. So they had to. And I'm wondering, and again, this is just me spitballing, we have a name change in CBS All Access. CBS All Access is basically dead, right?
Yeah,
it is now
fairly.
Paramount Plus. What if the Secret Hideout deal was with CBS All Access, and when they changed the name, that null and voided all of that?
Oh,
That's an interesting theory. Yeah.
It's not impossible, but I think that's a little bit too easy.
Well,
because it's not a change to name; it's like a completely different service that takes over.
That's what I'm saying.
CBS.
Is like the other one is dead. That's
that
my
might
point.
be, but that might be. It might not be the main reason, but that might be a convenient loophole, though.
That's my point. Is like that might just be what they needed, because, like I said, if you notice, everything Kurtzman has disappeared off the face of CBS. Period. Like, I'm not saying these things aren't still happening, but June was when, and again, this might be because of COVID, but June was when they originally had planned to start shooting Clarice. right?
Mhm.
We have not heard anything else about his Man Who Fell to Earth since it was announced. We're hearing all this push and movement. Now we've already got a casting rumor for Khan, which we're also hearing the same damn rumor. We're hearing a lot of the same rumors that everybody else are starting to hear certain things. I'm starting to feel like there's been some kind of shift, and the reason why they haven't been mentioning Paramount or reason Paramount hasn't been mentioning Star Trek a lot is I think there might be some truth to that whole they're not going to do movies anymore. But I think there's a reason for that too, and we can get into that down the road. But let's talk about Strange New Worlds first, because this is where Akiva Goldsman comes in, like we said, and another name that popped up, even though they're not involved with the Khan series, we heard somebody who might be coming back into the fold was Nicholas Meyer. Now, even though he's not attached to the Khan series, what do we feel like now with that name coming up gives me hope. And we know they drug his name through the mud with the first season of Discovery, because I think we can all pretty much figure he had very little to nothing to do with that first season, and all his work was probably chucked out the window. And they just used his name to sell the
for
series.
credibility. Yeah, I think he served in a mentorship way. I have a friend that's moved over to work on Strange New Worlds, and I know that he was working in parallel, but never really got the resources or the green light because it was perceived as being too old Trek, and they needed to be very different than what Paramount had. And Nicholas is really that Paramount era Star Trek. I think part of what's happening, though, is the most interesting connection would be to look back as to how Emma Watts intersects with Akiva. Because if you look further back, going back to like 2010 or 2009, when she was running franchises and working things at Fox, and Akiva had a deal with Warner Brothers and was also doing it, it could be that he is now eyes and ears for her as she takes up the reign and says, look, we need to straighten this out. We need to align anything that's going to be a movie with much more of the messaging that's going on in the shows, and perhaps with Kurtzman accusing the fans of being the problem, and with using it as his bully pulpit to do non-Star Trek messages and themes, it might be that a pre-existing relationship is there between them professionally, and that Akiva sees an opportunity to pitch the right person who can say yes, and that pushing that envelope a little bit by, hey, look, maybe I should take the reins, Strange New Worlds. If you're thinking about doing a new movie, maybe clean house on the ones that you have been developing, including, Quentin and all these other ones that were kind of floating around, or Noah Hawley, I think he had a project there for a while. Yeah. And so maybe the relationship to watch is the business relationship between Akiva and the head of Paramount.
Yeah, and I was going to get into that Noah Hawley thing here in a few minutes, but that's a very interesting point.
Very interesting take.
I feel like there's something to that, because Akiva's a big producer. Despite what we may feel about him, he's had connections with a lot of big movies, good and bad. Yep. And if he's had a history with Emma, that would make sense. And it would also make sense why Kurtzman would kind of be shoved to the side.
Yeah, I think the Emma Watts Akiva Goldsman connection is not to be ignored. I think she has a genuine interest in making Star Trek a jewel in the crown, and she probably realizes that the Kurtzman approach is not working because people like us and the Phantom Menace are going, we want to love this, but you're not making it easy, and you're not creating the kind of Star Trek that is hopeful, and it's not the message that we latched onto with Star Trek and that we love. If people don't want to collect the ships, and kids don't want to play with the toys, and we're not talking about Star Trek in a positive way, as we had for 35, 40 years, clearly, even to a business person who doesn't know how to, actually make the show, but goes, look, something's wrong, then I'm hopeful that if she says, look, we need that to be a jewel in the crown, if that means breaking relationships, if it means I need you to be my eyes and ears, and without losing face, we need to start phasing out some of the old guard, it makes complete sense, because if I'll bet if I searched back for a correlation between Akiva and Emma Watts, you would see they have intersected for decades.
Yeah, I think that's a very interesting. I don't know if I'd call it a breakthrough, because I mean, obviously we know that the name's been coming up, but I want to move on. Like with Strange New Worlds, that's the thing, is what we also kind of heard, though, it was kind of funny about to get into this part, was it was almost behind Kurtzman's back, or at least if not to spite him, but without his involvement, almost pretty much, and that just kind of sounds funny. And it's funny that the way you just put a lot of the things you just said, because Jewel in the Crown is something we kept hearing too. You know, it was a big deal for them. It was always a big deal for Sherry Redstone, and it feels like it's been a big deal for Emma Watts going forward, but it's not something they've talked about too much in the press, but we keep hearing things. And I starting to wonder about that. What do you think, Andre?
Yeah, no, I can say that what I heard very clearly is that for Shari Redstone, Star Trek is really, really important. And she apparently was the one who told Emma Watts, look, Star Trek is important. This is a priority. Unlike all the other licensed things we have, this is ours. Make it work.
Mm-hmm.
Because
that is great news for an artist, and I'll tell you why. Anytime I've ever pitched something, it's uphill work if you have to first convince the person that has the money. You know, art is people that love art versus people that love money. And if you have to convince the people that want to make money that it is important to them, that's a step that actually creates the most compromises in a project. But if you're approaching someone where we want to fix this, we want to make good Star Trek that people like us all enjoy, we want hopeful Star Trek, we want to get back on track, that will attract a different type of person to be a showrunner or to be a guiding force than a person who goes, all right, what have you got? You walk into a pitch meeting like, oh, we also got this Star Trek thing. And someone who's not a fan, or who really just sees it as an opportunity to do whatever they were going to do anyway, that kind of person is not the person that's going to get in the room and pitch. What's going to happen is, look, we want to fix Star Trek. Who wants to do Star Trek is a very different brief than we've got a bunch of different things, and Star Trek could be the Little Rascals to us. It's like, you want to do something with the Little Rascals? Sure, I'll do that. Versus someone going, hey, I hear you guys are fixing Star Trek. I have a terrific Star Trek idea. That's a very different pitch, and it sets a very different tone.
Absolutely. So yeah, I think the basically, so those who are just coming in, we had a bit of an influx of a crowd. So those who have missed the main headlines, we're rumored to be getting a Khan miniseries, as we talked about years ago. From our understanding, it's probably going to be a reworking of the Nicholas Meyer story, because he and Kurtzman are not involved. They have a possible Khan already casted in Dev Patel. Strange New Worlds is looking like it's being controlled more by Goldsman than Kurtzman. Kurtzman just seems to be kind of sitting around collecting a check at this moment, but we're even starting to question whether or not, and again, this is us just speculating now, that he's even that may even be questionable at this point, because I'm really starting to want to look into this whole deal with the name change, because this came to me with this whole thing, and I'm just thinking, wait a minute here. Because that's kind of what I kept hearing from some of our sources on and on again, is they were just trying to find a way outside. And Andre, you've said this too, trying to find a way out of the secret hideout deal.
Yeah, the one that, what's his name again? Les Moonves, in his kindness, left them on his way out the door. He really dropped them right in it. So, yeah. No, but it's very interesting to see exactly, or to see that things are really changing, because I have to say that this situation right now has been the most chaotic I've ever seen in the situation that's been basically going on with Star Trek the past 5 years. I have never seen so many differing reports, and so many people not really knowing anything as right now. Like, everyone knows something is up. There's something big happening. but no one is able to give any details into what. That's very interesting.
But
to
we're
see.
starting to get a picture here, and the picture I'm thinking is, and this is just me spitballing, guys. My take on this right now is that Kurtzman's been sidelined, Goldsman is taking over. They've got the money from someplace, whether it was injected from this other production company that the name that's listed on IATSE, because the individual that's listed there has his own production company as well. As I'm sure Goldsman probably has his own too. I didn't even bother to look, but he's not affiliated with Secret Hideout. That is, and we know that we've heard that the Tom brought up, the Tarantino project's dead. Hawley. Now let's talk about that real quick, because his project is something we keep hearing. It's on, it's off, it's on, it's off, it's on, it's off. I've heard it's on the back burner just like everybody else, but then all of a sudden now it was just announced this week that he's working on an Alien series. So when the hell is he going to have time between Fargo, this Alien series, all this other crap he's working on, to have time for Star Trek movie? I just don't see it. What do you think, Andre? Let's start with you real quick.
I think he has time for those other things because his Star Trek project is dead in the water and not.
That's what I'm thinking too.
I think Andre's right. Yeah. I agree, Andre. I think he was a marker. He was, I think, a transitional move, or who knows? It may have even been at some point a bargaining chip for original cast and creative to go, hey, we might just go a different way and get an entirely different crew, and we might do something else. He may have pitched something that was completely off the reservation. As far as the Kelvin universe, it may have been something completely different, even though for a long time.
Can I interject what I had heard?
Sure.
Real quick. What it started as was a Kelvin project, and then they said it didn't have to, so he was like going to do his own thing, but it's still on the back burner. So I don't know how far it got.
Well, and he still seems to be talking about it, because there was the whole thing where it's like, oh, it's less about war, more about exploration. I don't know if you guys heard about that. He was talking about that. He was talking about, he has a very pacifist sort of approach on it, where he's like, oh, I loved in Wrath of Khan that, he lowered his shields and isn't dealing with Khan. I love that about it. I remember reading something where he was like that, and that again could have been a move to tonally change it or negotiate it, but I don't know that it's going to go forward, and I don't know that it fits a vision, a cohesive vision anyway, for Star Trek going forward with CBS and Paramount. I feel like it got stuck in development hell for a reason. I don't know that it's going to happen.
Yeah, because that's one thing we keep hearing is ever since Emma took over, is with the re-merger, they're really working hard to get Trek back in line. That's one thing we keep hearing.
Yes, and whether that has legs, if his movie was predicated on bringing back the original, or not the original, but the cast from the 2009 version of Star Trek, was it going to be Kelvin, or is he, using the same, cast, but creating a new timeline with them, which it could be confusing messaging. I certainly know so far on the CBS side, they really are full steam ahead on.
Hawley said it wouldn't be related to any cast we've known before in his recent interviews. Yeah,
and yet, if you look at IMDb, I'll bet the original cast is still listed on that, because there was even an interview where he was saying, "Oh yeah, I'd come back as Spock," or whatever. But I know,
and that's what we had heard. Yeah, it started out as a Kurtzman JJ project, and then it changed.
And here's what I've always heard about it. Basically, there's not been a fourth Star Trek movie because they haven't found anyone who's willing to fund it.
That's the other problem.
After Beyond's massive underperformance, because of Beyond, Star Trek, their vision of Star Trek as a high-end blockbuster property was proven to have failed. And after that, they couldn't get anyone to fund it, especially after Chris Pine walked out. Like Chris Hemsworth, they could do without, but Chris Pine, Star Trek without Kirk, no one was going to fund that, even if it was lower budgeted. So I agree with this report that we heard, that there's not going to be any big screen Star Trek for a while.
I don't think so.
But
and the reason
but I do think there's going to be many Star Trek projects on Paramount Plus, because that's one thing they have.
Go ahead, Andre.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I
agree.
was just going to say, I can say I'll get into that part then. And the reason I think that we're going to be seeing more miniseries or possibly like quote unquote TV movies of Star Trek is because Paramount Plus is planning to do 52 movies a year, which means a movie a week. And they're not going to be low level, straight to video type shit. And they're not going to be big, huge theatrical blockbusters either. They're going to be mid tier movies. They're starting off with Yellowstone starring Kevin Costner. So, and this is me spitballing here, but I see Trek projects, especially low level Trek projects, fitting right in with these type of movies. What do you guys think? Because half these movies are going to drop on MTV and the other half are going to be on Paramount Network, and then they're going to be on Paramount Plus proper. I don't know which one first, but that's the case. That's a big deal. That's a lot of movies they're going to be making.
To
I
me,
agree.
it sounds like too many movies, like they're biting over more than they can chew. But I commend them for going mid-budget range. That's absolutely what they should do. That way you get more creativity, and that's also where Star Trek should be, the mid-budget range.
It should definitely be mid-budget, and I think we could go further with this. It needs to be a coordinated, scaled effort. The films in the 80s were essentially cinematic conclusions to a story that was begun on television. We spent time with these characters. We loved these characters. The reason we cried when Spock died in Wrath of Khan was that we had lived with them. We had lived with them in a series format which gave time to lavish attention on even the secondary characters. And finally, when we got to the films were really a series of cinematic conclusions to the framework that they built with very modest budgets on television. It doesn't cost anything to have a good idea. If it was me running Star Trek, I'd say, look, we need 3-4 years of developing a terrific episodic version of Star Trek Now, exploring new worlds, not worrying about running from one end to the ship and it's on fire and everything's blowing up, but take me new places, find new races, teach me about the characters. And then I turn to someone like Emma at Paramount and I say, I've developed this terrific storyline in season 2. I feel like for a modest budget, say 60 to 70 million, with the crew I already have in place, we shoot it with the TV crew that knows this thing backwards and forwards. The sets are already existing. People know and love the cast. Let me do something that I couldn't do on television. Let me bring to conclusion the conflict with this new alien race or this new discovery that we've made. Let's do it as a special event movie, and then let's continue to develop the characters in a series. And I would have one talking to the other. Stylistically, they would match. The reason Wrath of Khan worked is they shot it on a TV budget with a TV crew, and there's nothing wrong with it. It's a masterpiece of Star Trek because it was made by people that cared about it, they loved it, it had craft. What they're doing wrong is they're working in parallel.
Absolutely, and you're right, because that's what basically helped make between the movies and the TV show and TNG and the films at that time, they were basically working in tandem, working off of each other, using props and sets and other things like that. So like, I could see that going forward. And that's one thing we've said that, everybody's like, I don't know about the Strange New Worlds, and Andre and Rob and I, well, pretty much said, no, this is going to happen. Strange New Worlds is going to happen because it's already prepackaged. They've got the sets, they've got the cast, they've got the costumes, they got all the stuff they need. This is the way they used to make Star Trek. I mean, so I was never not at any point did I ever think that Strange New Worlds was not going to happen unless they just couldn't find the funding. But let's talk about that for a second, because that seems to be the case here, Andre, right? Then it seems like they've got an injection of money from somewhere, huh?
Apparently, I would imagine, I don't know this for certain, but I would imagine that this is related to the remerger, and that the powers that be have been able to find like the funding to make like these 52 new movies. Like the money from that has to go somewhere or come from somewhere.
Well, I know where part of it comes from, and part of it comes from like the deal with Netflix for like Beverly Hills Cop, because that's what like Emma was saying, is they're going to be, and I can't remember the other guy's name who's the head of I think the television production or something where they're saying like they're going to continue to do stuff for other companies, but they're going to have their own thing on Paramount Plus. And that's the guy he was talking about, the 52 movies a year, where he's like, they're going to continue to produce things for other networks and all that kind of stuff, and Netflix and stuff like that. And that's the kind of money they're going to use to fund these other projects, it sounds like, too.
Yeah, that's what I think too. And also, if they are smart, and you basically have, I don't know this for a fact, but I would hope that someone has been looking at fan films, like for instance, Prelude to Axanar, and look what they were able to do there with very limited crowd-funded means.
Yes.
Imagine what you actually can do on mid-range Star Trek if you just get rid of people that blow money like a drunken sailor just for the hell of it.
Yeah,
You're exactly right. You're
Well,
right,
and I think-
Andre. I agree.
I think Bill and Ted is one of the projects that kind of shows us that the movie star has to die. Because the only way that movie got made for as much as it did is they didn't pay anybody. and in that, like, there's no, like, let me put it this way. Basically, what they made that movie for is what Keanu Reeves basically makes on a movie. So, I mean, like, that's the thing, is the movie star is the biggest problem I think we have here, is that, again, it's a really, they have to start learning to take points, I guess, or something. What do you think, Tom? As an actor, how do you feel about this?
Oh, I think you've hit exactly the sweet spot. The star of Star Trek is the concept, is the actual idea. Who you plug into it is irrelevant. You can point to the most successful Star Trek films from the 80s. We didn't go see them because they had Dustin Hoffman as Khan. We went to go see them because we loved what they did with the ideas and the story. He's absolutely right. It needs to be a mid-level, take advantage of distribution the way it is now. Most movies have a limited theatrical. They don't need to open huge. They can stream. There's other places you can do it. I think that the idea of a star-driven Star Trek is the antithesis of what Star Trek should be. The reason the fan films are so rich with ideas and limited in their resources is they're being made by people who, A, get Star Trek. They know what it's about. They know the attitude of the characters. Their values are in line with the fans' values, but they're not star-driven vehicles. They're idea-driven vehicles. I would rather spend, if I were Paramount, I'd say I have $30 million. We can make 3 $10 million films. We get someone with a real vision to create these movies, and then use the sets and the people that exist in the television end of it to engineer or creatively engineer the scale of these movies, but also the show, and you will not miss it. You won't be, you know what, I would have loved this, but it didn't have Will Smith, or they didn't blow enough planets up or things. It would be ideas, because the best Star Trek is little things. I mean, let's face it, the things that we remember from the original series is holding back, a woman from being run over by a car, standing in the street. We remember little moments that they would have on the bridge where they'd look at each other and you're like, yes, I have a relationship with a friend like that. Those ideas are not big budget ideas. They've taken it and wrapped it in this sort of spectacle which dwarfs the original drama, the original interest. It's about science. It's about exploration. It's about a celebration of a certain point of view, exploring our universe and bringing it. That does not mean it needs to cost $100 million.
Exactly. No, and I know we've been kind of dumping a lot of, I wouldn't say bad news, but not great news on a lot of people here today. But I want to open up, like, here's the possibility with these 52 movies a year. We could possibly even see like a Deep Space Nine or Voyager movie out of these things now. That's not an impossibility, because the remerger has happened. These things can happen. Like, as bad as it's, like, we're kind of seeing, we're not through the woods yet with if Goldsman is in charge, but we're seeing a clearing, I think. Is that a good way to put it, Andre, do you think?
We can't see anything that's original canon until Secret Hideout is out.
Well, okay, let's assume they're gone. Let's assume they're gone, but
with that assumption, and yes, we can get in principle anything. We can get the Enterprise continuation in heading into the Romulan Wars that I've been wanting ever since Moonves prevented us from getting season 5 of Enterprise.
I'd be interested to find out about this whole deal with if the name change was able to cause any changes behind the scenes. That's something I'm definitely going to dig into more. But I think the main story is just for everybody who's still joining us. We are getting a possible con series or mini series. They have a possible con in Dev Patel. They are scheduled to start shooting Discovery season 4 in exactly a month, and Strange New Worlds in February, but Alex Kurtzman is not listed as a producer on either. We have from very good authority that a rumor, I guess, take it as, that Kurtzman nor Myers have anything to do with the Khan miniseries, but that does not mean they're not using Nicholas Myers' original treatment. That's just what we've heard. So, again, was there anything else that I missed, Andre, that we needed to pop in there?
I think that was about it. We can go through the ratings, though.
I was just going to say, it's probably a good time to shoot into the ratings before we get to Super Chats.
Before we get to the Super Chats, yes, indeed. No, because here's the thing, that when Star Trek Discovery first premiered, the only reason the series was greenlit was as a means to promote the by now failed CBS All Access. But in order to push that, the first episode of the two-parter pilot was actually broadcast on CBS. And that opened to, let's see, I have the numbers right here. That opened to, give me 1 second here. That had the Vulcan Hello, when it was broadcast on CBS in 2017, had 9.6 million viewers. And now, of course, it's three episodes and 3 years and 2 episodes later, when season 1 of Discovery is being broadcast on CBS again. So, of course, you would expect that number to go down significantly. But how much should it go down? That is something that I want to hear from you, Tom Konkle, because the actual number, it went down from 9.6 million in 2017 to 1.7 million in 2020. But the good news is that the numbers were pretty stable for the second episodes, which was seen by 1.669 million. So, about 100%, or 100,000 less viewers than the pilot episode. But still, how do those measures up? Those numbers measure up, given that it's 3 years later and it's been available on streaming and DVD and Blu-ray for those 3 years. Still, how are those numbers?
Those numbers reflect two things, in my opinion. One is, as you say, it's a 3-year-old property. Those people that were going to seek it out and were passionate, about Star Trek, and either their interest dropped off or whatever, those people are not going to tune in again on the network version of this. I think you get a lot of people sort of sniffing around. It's like a voting system. You have your two parties that were already adamant about it, and then you have your middle undecided people. And I think what you're seeing in these numbers are the people that are undecided or passive watchers of Star Trek, and you're seeing it level out and plateau. And unfortunately, if they stick with it, I don't think there's going to be a lot of meat on it that keeps an audience, and those kinds of numbers driving a network show, it wouldn't last very long, particularly if you consider they probably couldn't have afforded to produce that show to produce those numbers. When you're looking at 1 million, something like that, you think, oh, that's a big number, but really, when you look at the cost and the return on the investment, it just doesn't make sense. It's never going to live there. So you're basically planting a flag and getting people interested in something that simply won't exist there. It's not going to be on that platform.
About that, here's the big question, though. Why did they decide to broadcast it on TV now, several years later? And here we have heard some competing rumors, and I'd like to hear your thought on this, because apparently there's one school of thought saying that this was something that Kurtzman and the powers that be at Secret Hideout wanted to show that, yes, there is absolutely interest in this. That it hasn't worked so far is just because it was on CBS All Access, which was your punk platform, and that didn't work. But when it's on TV, audiences will flock to it. Whereas another school of thought is saying that Emma Watts was saying, yeah, let's put it on there. Let's see how that works out. If you have really created something good or something horrible that audiences basically recoil from.
Yeah, I think it may have started with that, thinking that a CBS debut would show that we were making the pipe too small. The pipeline to get to it, having it isolated on that, and creating scarcity with it is somehow going to be the reason why people don't like it. And I think, to be honest, because I've been involved in this myself, trying to get some projects going, because of the disease that shall have no name, they just don't have enough stuff that's ready to go. So they looked at what assets have not been on their network service, and they said, oh, we're sitting on this $1 million an episode show. Let's fill a slot with that, because a lot of the shows are paused. We haven't been able, most things are stuck in post right now. We're behind on everything because they weren't able to complete them or finish them, or there's a lot of considerations. One thing I will say is any effects driven project right now, you would think would have been able to be easily worked on and fixed during the pandemic. But the reality is that there was no system in place to send the asset out to a person's home. In other words, you can't send out shots, or you can't send out a show from CBS or Paramount or anywhere and have your person work on it from home, because the pirating considerations and the data management was simply not there. So although a lot of shows were shot, the post-production stopped. Even you would think you could sit at a desk and work and edit, but it stopped because no one could receive the assets from the show. So I think it was twofold. CBS was like, okay, we've got this expensive finished show. The producers are telling us it's because it's on this rarefied air of CBS All Access. Let's go ahead and try it. And so when it comes out with a whopping 0.2 rating, in the 18 to 49 demo, then they can come back and say, well, fans already saw it, or but the bottom line is it's not engaging the casual viewer, because it's not terribly good in my opinion. And it certainly doesn't have the hardcore Star Trek fan, because they've already sniffed it out in the rarefied atmosphere of the CBS and said, look, I got burned there. Why would I watch it again here? So it served no purpose that it was intended for. It simply was a bellwether that this show is not welcome and it's not working. But it filled in a slot because they had nothing to air.
I do got to correct you on one thing. It cost them more than $1 million an episode. Sadly,
Oh, yeah. I'm just saying
a bit more an episode, but yeah.
No,
but I got another.
Just as a word, yeah.
Another scenario I'm curious about would possibly the ratings on TV be another way that could weasel out of the Secret Hideout contract? Like if the ratings were bad enough, is that something that's possibly in a contract somewhere?
It's possible. If initially when you do a contract, usually there's a rollout where there's a fixed time. For example, we have the exclusive rights on CBS Access for 2 years, 3 years, and at the expiration of that exclusive license, we can move it to free TV or another venue.
Syndication and stuff like that.
Yeah, syndication. It could have happened. The nature of the show and the quote unquote edgy nature of it probably made it so that it wasn't as attractive as a primetime family entertainment. But I think they probably did have a clause where they could move it to another thing, or there was a last minute addendum where an argument, as you had said, they said, hey, put it up there. We'll prove that there's this untapped audience that simply didn't want CBS All Access, and we'll show you they wanted it. And unfortunately, it cratered out. And the proof of concept didn't work. It didn't engage the people that it wanted, because those numbers should have gone up. they shouldn't have plateaued. And in fact, we still don't know if they will even stay on that plateau.
Yeah.
So it's very possible that by the season finale, it's gone.
Right, I was gonna say, because no matter which scenario it is, it's not looking good for either. Because you only have less than a million people in the key demographic watching, which is for a network show.
Yeah,
is
for a network show of that price point. You're right, crazy low,
horrible. They can't. Well, they won't be able to sell. They won't be able to sell ads on it before too long. That's the thing. Nobody's going to spend the kind of money they're going to be asking for ads. So, like, you have that issue there. Andre, Rob, anything you guys else want to add or discuss about the ratings?
I think we are pretty good to go, unless you have something to add, Rob.
No, not really.
Yeah, no, I think you've said everything there is to say about the ratings. Could have been a whole heck of a lot better.
Well, I was going to say, I think they're a lot worse than I even anticipated they were going to be. I think Rob, because I think we had predicted 2-3 million viewers.
Yeah, something like that. 2-3, but they were like 1.8 or something like that. Or
well, basically, yeah, it's basically less than a million people are really watching.
Yeah, I think CBS drew like a 0.2 rating in the 18 to 49 demo, which is about 1.7 million people.
And there was some big, huge shift in last week's demographic, which is weird. I'm still trying to figure out because I don't understand the math. It was something I was going to talk to you about, Rob, because you're a little bit better on that shit. But there was some like weird shift, like 50% of the demographic they lost or something like that.
Oh,
I don't know what the deal was, but I was going to show you those ratings before Monday's show so we could discuss.
Yeah, usually from what I've seen, they like to tout demographics. Oh, the show this show didn't only it drew a 0.2, but it won the 35 to 50-year-old female demographic.
Okay, well, if that's the case, then I'm understanding with this, they lost half of that demographic in the
Yeah, and the end of the day, the problem is the show, and
it's not good.
Things cannot be true. Both cannot be true. You can't argue that the fans already saw it, and the same argument is, well, the fans haven't seen it yet because it's behind a paywall and they will see it. Well, it can't be that. The ratings have proved there's no interest in it when it's free, and there's no interest when you pay for it. And if people aren't, buying the toys and following it and talking about the characters, it's just a failure. There's nothing, Star Trek is fantastic. This particular show just doesn't work.
Absolutely. And same thing with Picard and even Lower Decks to a lesser level. But yes, I agree 100%. And I think that's where we're at with this, really, is nobody likes it. And I think that proves with these ratings, because even if there was this, fan base they claim to have, they would have come out in droves to support the show, and they didn't, because they even tried to online. They tried to push a campaign, right, Rob?
Yeah. They tried to, watch Star Trek again, show support. The only argument we always hear pro Star Trek Discovery, pro Picard is, if we don't support it, we'll never get Star Trek again. And Tom, you keep coming back, Tom Connors, you keep coming back to the McDonald's analogy. I mean, did the McLean or the McRib go away forever? No. You can, same thing with the new Coke. I'm sick and tired of hearing that. It's like, Star Trek will fail if we don't support it. It's like, no, we'll just hopefully get something new and better. In fact, all that the supporting has done to this point, what little they've had, has destroyed the brand. Because as we pointed out, McFarlane Toys has pretty much pulled out of their deal with Star Trek, causing the classic Star Trek stuff to go to clearance. Yeah. It's sad when that shit's not even selling. It's done.
Yeah, it's a real barometer of the level of damage that you can do when you release back-to-back new projects, new explorations of Star Trek that just don't resonate and just are tonally off. Let's hope the next iteration with something like Star Trek Strange New Worlds has likable characters and can become the flagship of something, because this, you're beating a dead horse at this point.
Yeah, that's the only thing we have hope for at this point, I guess.
Yeah. And that's also something that must be emphasized, because many people accuse us of hating just for hating, but that couldn't be further from the truth. We all love Star Trek. We want to support this. We want CBS and Paramount and whoever, whatever they call themselves this week, to be successful with this, because that is what gives us the Star Trek that we want. But when they're failing, someone has to hold them accountable, and that's what we're doing.
I like this. Thomas Hart. If you don't support this Star Trek, there will be no more Star Trek. We call that a win at Cobra Kai Dojo. Cobra Kai never die. That's right.
That's right. Don't encourage.
Cobra Kai.
Don't support that. It only encourages them. Yeah.
Exactly.
No,
Cobra
I
Kai
love
is how
Star
you do it.
Yeah, I love Star Trek. I am a creator out here in LA. I would jump at the opportunity to do Star Trek, and I would not do what they're doing now. I have a deep appreciation of the lore of it. I am saddened that it needs to be made by people that have seen Star Trek, love Star Trek, understand Star Trek, but most important, it needs to be someone who understands about likable characters and what the show is appealing. And the appeal of the show is that it is exploring us while it explores the unknown. And that
Absolutely.
morality play is fundamental Star Trek. And if you can't apply that to every single episode that you have coming out, then you have failed. And we certainly can apply that to the new series that are coming out, and they've failed. They have become, navel gazing. They've got social justice considerations. Characters aren't acting the way they should be acting, and they've made the Federation and the structure that is the hopefulness is the villain. And when you have that as your fundamental, that's the optics of the show. People that love Star Trek aren't going to love it. And why would someone who's on the fence about Star Trek go, oh, here's this great self-loathing show that has really unlikable characters. Let me watch it every week. That just doesn't happen. It's common sense.
Yeah. And to use the McDonald's analogy or a fast food analogy, the what they're doing here is they're basically taking the Whopper and changing everything about it. Like that's the significance here. It's like, okay, you've taken something I've loved and you've changed it, instead of introducing something new that I can just reject, which like that's what they do like with Picard and with Discovery and soon with Strange New Worlds is they can't touch something that's never been touched before. No. They got to go fuck with something we love, and then they yell at us for it. And this is something that we talked about quite a bit on the High Council the other night, Tom. I remember as Sander Hammerslag brings up here, let's not forget the insistent insulting of fans. And I think that's one thing, even though like or hate Akiva Goldsman, I don't ever remember him going out on social media and attacking fans.
Yes.
So I think that's
that
might be a possible reason for some of this change. Like they found that, they found the antagonistic nature of Kurtzman's Trek too vile and toxic for them to deal with at this point, maybe.
Absolutely. I think when the creative face of something is waving their fist at the people that love what they're creating, and let's face it, they're not the original creator of this property. They are the steward of this property. They are the person who should be moving the property along, creating better Star Trek, listening to the fans that love Star Trek. Again, as I said in the High Council, storytelling is not, it was a dark and stormy night, and then what happened, and ask the audience to give you what you want. You're supposed to provide the story and the entertainment, but you have a dialogue with that audience. You understand their needs. You don't go, see, I didn't know what you wanted. I subverted your expectations. No, you should exceed my expectations. Star Trek should be exceeding, not subverting our expectations. And when you exceed expectations, you get new fans, you build a bigger tent, and we are all the fans of this, and myself included. So to alienate me is to alienate the very thing that allows you to have the resources to be a creative person. It is bad business and it's bad art.
Exactly. Well put. Very well put.
Very well put indeed.
And on that note,
better.
Let's get into some super chats. Did you got some time to stick around yet, Tom, for just a little bit longer? Or?
Absolutely. I can hang for another 5 or 10 minutes.
Yeah,
all right, let's try and get through these.
Let's rush through these, and we'll give another shout out to your work before we call it a night. So super chats. Starting us off was Diego Flores, who sent us 5 Peruvian souls, saying, "Hail Tom, Andre, Rob, and Tom." So yeah, 2 Toms in there. Hail Diego.
The Tom Club. Yeah, thank you very much. I appreciate all of your kind comments. I really love doing these. This is such a terrific channel, and how nice as someone who, I'm trying to get my stuff made, but I'm also a consumer of it. How nice to have these discussions and hear the thoughts of the people that are certainly in my mind when I'm creating, but also just really good ideas or enthusiasm from fans. I know people are out there that enjoy this, and it really lights a fire under people creatively when they realize, you know what, we don't need to talk down to people, we don't need to insult them. What we need to do is rise to the occasion, because I think people are always hungry for good entertainment.
Absolutely, that is so true. And moving on to the next super chat, that is from Azrael213, who sent us $5 saying, fans are sick of the post-Enterprise/2005 alternate universe. Anything without secret hideouts, corrupt fingerprints on it is at least an improvement. And Mr. Tickletunk sent us $5 saying, I wish they would just hire the two brothers from Red Letter Media. Fans would be happy and CBS would make shit loads of fuck.
I don't know if they're brothers, but if you just mean like guys, like in brothers like that, maybe, yeah.
Bros.
And then Mr. Tickletrunk sent us another $5. I tried, maybe I've screwed up the pronunciation there, but basically said that YouTube didn't let me swear in my last super chat.
Yeah, they won't.
That's what I was saying. I think people got what I was saying there. So, yeah. And Nelson Sheretta sent us $2 saying, Picard was the last shot. I have no more interest. I bet many people feel that way.
Well, not only that, Picard was one of those things that a lot of people didn't see Discovery. Like, let's face it, folks, we were right about that. Hashtag Midnight Edge is right. But no, like now nobody watched Discovery, to the point where when a lot of people took on Picard, like a lot of people did watch Picard, and they were like, what in the fuck? Because they weren't prepared for this shit. You know, like we'd been telling people, like, just get ready because this is going to be bad. This is going to be Discovery level bad. Just we're warning you.
Yep. Well, you're right, Thomas. The analogy I've told people is watching Picard was the exact feeling I had, that sinking feeling when they said there was going to be a Star Wars and you realize about halfway through the movie you're never going to see the three characters from Star Wars together. That sinking feeling that this is fundamentally wrong. When I'm watching Picard, I'm like, oh my God, it's not even acknowledging the next generation. It's a different character. It was designed to fail from that moment. And
shall I say 25% different? Sorry.
Yeah, 25% different. And I think that's exactly why everyone just gave up, because Picard on paper could have been a rallying point to reconnect it to the next generation, to have it be the old school. I mean, how is it the Orville did Picard better than Picard? It's amazing.
Thank you. Yes, that's what we've been saying all this time.
Exactly.
And for those, and we keep saying, for those who say, oh, Star Trek won't work now, the old Star Trek, you're just living in the past, it won't work, it's passé, the Orville proves it does.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, those were little morality plays, and in one season, people became emotionally invested in it, and you went, I actually had zero expectations, and by the end of it, I went, it's actually pretty good. Like, there's some great stories, there were some interesting, challenging things in it. It was funny, but it also took itself seriously sometimes, and it proved that if you came up with, I don't know, a little science fiction show about a ship that goes to new places that had likable characters, you might have a hit show. It's crazy. It's a crazy thought.
When the Orville was first reviewed, I don't want to take up too much time on this, but when the Orville was first reviewed, I said to our Tom, we were looking at the reviews, and we were saying,
"What the fuck show are they watching?"
Yeah, we were saying exactly. We said this is getting slim, and then we watched the pilot, and we said, "Yeah, exactly. What are they watching? This is actually really good." And then by that third episode about a girl, about the gender reassignment with the Mocklins, and the very end when they showed the Rudolph toy in the crib with the child. I said to Tom, my God, they've managed to out Star Trek. Yes. It was that moment I said, you know what? I'm sold. Whatever you guys are going to do, I'm on board.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of that resonated with a lot of people out there.
I think you're absolutely right. I think they caught the spirit of it in those little moments, and it surprised all of us because we're like, wait, what? How did you, and part of it is he brought into the team a lot of the, composers, a lot of the people that worked for Star Trek, but at its fundamental, it had a guiding hand in Seth, who is a huge Star Trek fan. And I know that because he's the one who produced Cosmos I was in,
Yeah.
and he loves Star Trek, clearly. They wouldn't let him do it. They wouldn't let him do Star Trek.
Well,
so he's like, fine, I'll do my own.
There you go. And that's a great example of exceeding expectations. Cause I think and I was actually, it's funny that Rob brought that point up because I was going to myself in that I feel like I don't know. I think Rob and I were right. I don't think the critics really watched the first season. I don't think they did. I think they just kind of watched the first episode and then they just gave their review and they didn't watch any more episodes because even Andre didn't care for that first episode.
A lot of critics went into it thinking it was going to be a spoof.
Exactly. And it exceeded their expectations by the second season when they actually sat down and watched the damn thing. And we every week we kept telling people, you need to watch this show. This show is more Star Trek than anything we've seen in years. It is. Yeah. And it could be Star Trek. All they have to do is slap the Federation things on everything. And call it Star Trek Orville. It's Star Trek.
It was a next generation Star Trek. Yeah.
And Kevin Street in the chat, the critics didn't want the Orville to be good. And that's another thing, too, because we heard from the same critics that panned the Orville. They lauded the virtues of Star Trek Discovery and Picard to a larger extent.
True.
And I think, and this is just me, a lot of them didn't want the Orville to be good because, hey, if this is good, that means we were wrong about Discovery, and we can't be wrong about Discovery.
Right. And also it confused them because there weren't overt political undertones to every motive in the Orville show. I think that a lot of critics, obviously wanted to sort of virtue signal that, no, we're in that new edgy, destroy everything, deconstruct it, be grim and dark feel. So that, tone is everything. I was telling the story, I think, in the High Council, or it may have been on Midnight Edge. If you go into a pitch and you don't tell them up front, this is a comedy or this is a drama, if they know me as a comedy guy and I hand them a drama script, by the third page, they'll be like, this sucks. Why I haven't laughed once. I'm like, no, it's a drama, So I think critics went into it going, oh, it's Seth MacFarlane. He's going to do, his kind of take on it. It's going to be all jokes, and they wouldn't like the jokes whether they were good or not. But I think it bore it out because the critic score was like in the 30s out of 100, and the users were like in the 8s out of 10. And everyone liked I think the comedy was a ruse. I think Seth used his creative cachet to say, no, it's going to be funny and he'll have some stuff. And then as he got a foothold, it became a modern, intriguing take on a Star Trek-like world. But his entry point was he was known for comedy, and there's no way they would have handed him the keys. I'll be honest with you. When I auditioned for and got a small part on Cosmos, I thought it would be a funny piss take on Carl Sagan's Cosmos. But then when I met Andrewian, who's, Sagan's wife, and with Seth's team, he's like, no, I love science. I love exploring. This is an absolutely dead serious, but, I have some humorous things to it, but it's a wry look at, but this is a sequel to Cosmos. And I went, now this guy doing the Orville, he has the right idea. His entry point was comedy, and as soon as he kicked the door open, he went, no, by the way, this is going to be a real fun science fiction.
Right. And I think he also kind of took the critics to task with episodes like what's the one, Rob, I keep forgetting the name of, where they have the voting in the planet because everything's run by social media and shit.
Yeah, it's Majority Rule.
One. Yeah, to me, that's the episode that blew me away.
Yeah, it was a great episode. Great episode.
And that's how you do things like, exactly. That's how you do things like Star Trek and comment on modern day things. And that's what we kept trying to say through Discovery the whole way through is like, you can do this stuff. You don't have to make it, dour and dark and shitty and all these things that you're doing, because how are we supposed to expect to believe this? Because that's one thing, I finally got to crack with Myers, because he was a tough cookie to crack in the interview, but I think a lot of it had to do with NDAs. But I was like, how do you deal with things like the colorful metaphors and things like that in the series, when clearly when we see in Star Trek 4, at that point, they don't even know how to swear. You know, same
Yeah.
thing with the violence. I mean, how do you account for that? And he's like, you know, that's a very good question. And, you know, he kind of
Very good.
went in a roundabout answer to it. But the point is like, I don't think he could answer it. And that's the whole thing is that they've gotten themselves back into this dark corner when you've got Klingon rape, baby heads, and all this other shit going on. That's not Star Trek.
No,
there's
it's
been
not.
violence in Star Trek, but not to that degree. And even without
Not to
a
that
context.
perverse degree.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. And let's face it, comedy is like science fiction. Both of them allow you in a fun way to talk about sensitive or interesting subjects in a genre that is by its nature, you're entertained. You're in comedy, you might be truth telling about society, or you might be pointing out absurdity in people. In science fiction, you can point out absurdity in society, but both of them tell the truth. And if their truth is a dark and unhopeful truth, you're going to lose everybody. And even the Orville, with its humor, had a hopeful feeling at its core. And in the writing, they always made things better at the end of the episode. If you may not have gotten the resolution that you expected, it may be unexpected, but it was inevitable.
You said the whole thing about Seth MacFarlane and about using humor and telling the truth. And I think I read an article in Rolling Stone a number of years ago, and Rolling Stone these days isn't worth the paper it's printed on. But I digress on that. But there has been this, I don't want to say a vendetta, but there's been a resentment towards Seth in a lot of circles in Hollywood that at least in my opinion, that he does tell the truth, he doesn't pull any punches, and that he is good at just about everything he does. He sings, he writes, he does animation, he can act, and it's like, hey kids, stay in your lane, go make your little fart joke cartoons,
Yeah,
and
how dare you be so talented? Yeah.
And let me tell you, you were in Cosmos. I was absolutely riveted by Cosmos. I remember the original Cosmos with Carl Sagan, and when Neil deGrasse Tyson told the story about Carl Sagan reached behind him, pulled a book out and signed it. Didn't matter which one. He wrote them all.
Yeah.
I'm like, it was, those moments are so engaging. And the true mark of something being engaging is when you could pull it out in an everyday conversation and you say, oh yeah, you know what? I was watching the Orville last night and they had a very similar situation. Oh, really, because that is the real subversion. That is real subversion.
That's not true subversion.
That's true subversion. And they did it on the original Star Trek, A Private Little War, stuff like that. You
talked about really important stuff, but you talked about it in a fun, interesting way. But you also didn't quite know we weren't told what to think about it.
Yes,
I think what I like about the Orville is he can point his satirical finger at something, but we are not told this is also what you must think about it, because the very best science fiction presents it.
Bones, we have to maintain that balance of power if we are to ever achieve the resolution we want in the future.
Exactly.
And I've never been a Seth MacFarlane fan. Full disclosure, Rob will back me up on this. I've never been. The only thing he's ever done that I cared for was American Dad, and that was just casually. I avidly was not a fan of Family Guy. Did not care at all for the Cleveland show. In fact, like I've said many a time, Rob, that I feel about Family Guy like Cartman does. If you've seen the famous 2-part episode where he tries to have Family Guy destroyed. I actively hated that show for many years. I'm just like, all it is remember the time, remember the time, remember the time, remember the time.
You think that's bad? Yeah.
Yeah, you think that's bad. You think that's bad. Remember the time? Yeah, that's all it is. And anyway, but no, like I've grown to love Seth because of Orville. I didn't mind Ted, but other than that, but we need to get to these super chats, back to the super chats, because Tom was got to get going here too. So
I actually have to rehearse it too.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, well, just let us know when you got to leave.
Of course, thank you.
Thank
you for having me.
Absolutely, man. We've been sharing your be sure, guys, if you haven't already, check out Tom's YouTube channel. We've been sharing the link, and so has our awesome mod in the chat today, Stephen Walton, sharing all the links for you, including Tom's to his awesome YouTube channel. So check that out for all his trailers and all that good stuff.
Thank you.
Yeah. And then moving on with the super chats, Mr. Tickle Trunk sent us $5 saying, love OG Trek to DS9 and Voyager. This will be their third and final chance to make me give a shit about the franchise. New Trek is puritanical garbage. Kind of, yeah. And the Culture Casino sent $1.49. It was like a sticker with a cute little unicorn, which my daughter always loves. So
I think that's his way of telling me to get my ass over to the other stream, which I'm coming as soon as we're done here.
And Matt G sent us $2 saying, who's more unorganized, Star Wars or Star Trek? I can answer that. Star Trek right now is more unorganized because Star Wars has a new sheriff in town in Jon Favreau.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we're kind of seeing the same thing with Emma Watts, but yeah, I think you're right, Andre, that Star Wars is a little bit farther along. And I think the whole Pedro incident kind of, if it's true, just shows that Favreau has a lot more power, or has the power that we've been saying he has, Yeah,
correct. And Jaegerbomb sent us $5 saying, they're honestly making a 4th season of STD. Come on, Paramount. There's got to be a point where they stop this, right? Some kind of hope coming. Well, I remain unconvinced that season 4 is coming, but if it is, if the funding is there, that's what we've always said.
Yeah, we have to say it's tentatively scheduled to film.
Yeah. There's a difference between that and absolutely happening. Case in point, where's Section 31?
Oh, that's deader than dead.
Yeah, I know
that. Like, the only thing that might save that is some loophole because of the beer bug that they get around some things, but they have been so far off, and that's the thing we've heard so many times over, is that if they don't start filming by such and such date, they lose Mchale Yeoh. And from what I heard another rumor, and I never even said anything to you about, Andre, that the only reason she was in Discovery Season 2 and the reason she got shoved in Discovery Season 3 is because Section 31 is not happening. So it's to finish off her contract or some shit like that.
Yeah, I heard something similar to it, so that the contract is now done and she ain't coming back. That's what
she will be in Season 3, but that's it, yeah.
That's part of the contractual thing, so she'll be there, but outside of that. So yeah,
because she's busy filming a bunch of other things. So
yeah, she has no shortage of offers, so she's quite busy. She does not. Let's just say that Star Trek needs her more than she needs Star Trek.
Yeah, she's basically their Liam Neeson for Phantom Menace was. That.
Very true. Yeah, she was an anchor there. And she doesn't need him.
Yeah. Absolutely. Moving on, Adam Wofford sent us $2 saying, okay, now I want to see Dustin Hoffman as Khan.
Oh, shit, right?
Can you imagine?
I've hurt you, and I'm going to go on hurting you.
I do believe that he was in consideration for Spock at one point.
Definitely going to keep hurting you.
Yeah, at one point in history when they were considering
now I could see him play Spock.
Star Trek for the big screen with different actors, that he was the one they were thinking of.
I don't know about that. Yeah, I'm sure they were going for the Benetton ad version where it was like, oh, if we could get this star and this star and this star, and fortunately, wiser heads prevailed, because the thing about Star Trek, as we said with that Dustin Hoffman example, is none of us loved those movies because they had some big star from the 80s in them, or that they were star-driven vehicles on television. That's not the point. A television show should make stars. It shouldn't need stars.
Now, if he originated the role, yes, but I could not see him taking over the role.
No, not at all.
Yeah. And then moving on, Christian Sander sent us €3 in a green thumbs up super sticker, so thank you so much. And Makini90 sent us $5 saying, what does this say about future shows like Star Trek Prodigy in your eyes, everyone? Yeah, you take it, Tom.
Well, I was just going to say, we've already kind of seen, that if Kurtzman is not as involved with things going forward, I don't think he was very involved with this show anyway, because this was something that was more Nickelodeon deal. Like it was
exactly. Nickelodeon funded on Nickelodeon, so that's completely different.
And I can't even remember the animation company that's doing it. So
it's the same guys who do How to Train Your Dragon.
I was gonna say, because it's like an outhouse thing. Like, because the guys everybody who works on Lower Decks, they have worked on the short treks and all that kind of stuff. So they seem to be more of an in-house animation deal. Like Kurtzman's more involved with Lower Decks probably than he will be with Prodigy. If I have anything to say, if I have any guess on that.
Mm-hmm. That's probably true. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so too. So basically, none of this has anything to do with Prodigy. That's like a separate thing. So yeah. And Mark C sent us $5 saying, "Mr. Berman, we're sorry. Please come back."
Fuck you, Rick Berman. No, I'm just kidding.
We didn't understand how bad it would get.
Yeah. I'll take Star Trek First Contact and all that stuff any day now.
Yeah. It's like it's funny to look back wistfully now and go, well, at least that was close, you know. So, yeah.
There was nothing wrong with First Contact. Hell,
it was more Nemesis and all that shit. Yes,
I'll race you one Insurrection and take that over anything.
Yeah.
Well, Insurrection was at least more like an actual episode, just elongated. But yeah.
First Contact was by far my favorite.
It is. It definitely is the best one of those.
Yeah.
Well-crafted film, and surprising how quickly they went off the rails after it.
That was like the shame. That was like the only highlight of Next Generation era on film. 4 movies and one decent one, and that was that one. And other than that, it was a race to the bottom.
But for some context, real super quick, like basically, I always loved the films because I saw those more than I saw the films in theaters. Only saw random episodes before that. After I got more into the show, I understand why a lot of fans dislike the films. But like you said, looking back now, I'd take that any day over the crap we got now. Like, give me some dune buggies and pew pews any day.
It's funny, but First Contact was next level good, and it tonally was right, and it was everything that we liked about Next Generation distilled into one interesting story. You know, I wish they had stopped there. If there was no plan, which clearly there wasn't, they probably should have gone with the model that was created in Wrath of Khan, Search for Spock, and created a trilogy of films and ended it there. But it seemed like they were like, oh God, we've got to make another one. And they didn't really know what they were going to do, and they ended with a thud.
Yeah, they Shatner really got a bum deal directing that one.
Yeah,
the one after the trilogy.
What does God need with a starship?
Yep. What do we do now? Yeah.
Bring back Meyer. That was what they did then.
Yes, they did. Anyway,
and that was the way to end it. That was a beautiful film.
Yes.
Yeah. Absolutely. Moving on. MGTOW Elder Monk and Pathfinder sent us $5 saying, "Woke politics destroyed a great franchise. Now I'm going to dig through my DVDs and watch Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan. That is entertainment."
Might I suggest if you have a 4K television, that is available in 4K on most streaming services. So the only Star Trek movie in 4K, mind you.
Yeah, it looks beautiful. It looks like it was shot yesterday. It's a beautiful
transfer. It looks gorgeous.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. And Chris Nimitz sent us 10 Polish zloty saying, "Boys, did you like the last Lower Decks episode? That would be the one that we haven't reviewed yet." I haven't, that's still coming, but I haven't seen it yet. Boys, what did you think about it?
Oh, everything you hated about Lower Decks and Discovery rolled into one episode.
I didn't watch it yet. I watched 5 minutes of it and like, fuck this.
And I had to watch it twice because I had to put together that reference clip.
That's your own fault.
Yeah,
and I can't blame that on anybody but yourself.
Yeah. I feel like Paul's grandfather should be yelling at me in a hard day's night. Why are you tormenting your eyes with that rubbish?
Yes, good reference. I know exactly what you mean. I have to go, guys. I haven't seen it.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Tom, for joining us. It's been a pleasure, as always, and an honor, of course. And we'll definitely have you back again real soon, of course.
Yes, we'll have you back very soon. And until then, which movies of yours should the audience watching check out?
I would love for you to take a look at a little love letter I did called, it's a love letter to film noir called Trouble Is My Business. which you can find online on most platforms, on Amazon or Vudu or wherever you might enjoy watching streaming movies. I have a movie coming out on the 29th called Noise in the Middle, which is a thriller, a kind of horror thriller. And I have a lot of things online that you can find on my YouTube channel. So I'm in the process of writing more things, and hopefully when the world returns, I'll have some more stuff to do. And it's always, always a pleasure to speak with you. And I really appreciate the fans out there and the Fandom Menace. I am certainly a member.
Absolutely great to hear. And I got to tell you guys, if you're a horror fan, check out the trailer for the Noise in the Middle. That's what it's called, right?
Yeah, Noise in the Middle. Yeah,
amazing. So do check that out. You'll probably get a kick out of that for sure. And yeah, if you're a Nora fan, check out the other one as well.
Thank you very much, guys. I'll talk to you soon.
Take care, Tom.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Yes, and with that, let's move on to the remaining super chats. Mills sent us 35 South African runs saying anything associated with or related to aesthetically or in the same universe as SH is going to a secret hideout. Then is going to fail. It won't be tolerated. Yeah, that's very fair point of view. And Dean McMillan sent us $5 saying Kurtzman Trek did one fantastic thing. They cast Anson Mount as Pike. He is amazing. I am holding out a slim hope for Strange New Worlds. And Porchovia, missing an N in there, sent us $5 saying Gene Sons Rod is executive producer of the past 3 Kurtzman shows. Does he provide creative input, or is he there to collect a check? The latter. Most decidedly the latter. He is there in name only, and he's collecting a paycheck. He has no creative input. And Mr. Trickle Trunk sent us $5 Canadian. I'm not exaggerating when I say people like McFarlane are modern-day heroes. He had to trick a studio into making Star Trek when fans lost everything. As reference to Seth MacFarlane, obviously. And yeah, I agree. I've been a fan of Seth MacFarlane ever since Enterprise, which he guest starred in. So that's just me. So, and finally, Horace Cock Johnson sent us $5 saying, I had 140 pounds, half Rottweiler, half Doberman. I named him Khan after one of the greatest villains in cinematic history. I'm sure that's a great dog.
You yell Khan a lot?
My neighbor actually had a dog that was also half Rottweiler and half Doberman. That was an amazing combination.
Khan!
Did you shit on the floor? Khan! Thanks a lot for that one. Next, what we got next here?
Next, we are all caught up.
All right. Awesome. Well, I want to, we got one more come in just at the last moment here. Christian Sanders sent in, that's €5. Just Frackin' finally released DS9 in Sweet HD as seen in What We Left Behind documentary, and I'll be happy. As for new Trek, make it new and Trek. I'm not sure what they had for assets in the DS9 documentary. They may have just did whatever they could for that. Because I'm under the understanding is most of the effects for that show by that time they had gotten to digital. So none of those effects are even in remote HD. They're all standard def, and they would have to re-render all of them.
They'd have to basically do the same thing that they did with the Next Generation box,
which took like 6-7 years, I think, of work almost. So.
Yeah, something like that. It was like a good.
We'll definitely have to have a conversation with Robert Meyer Burnett about that one of these days.
Absolutely. It was a long procedure, and those things unfortunately did not pay for themselves. So you're not going to get anything like that. I think the best you can hope for is some kind of future algorithm that's going to clean up things for you. That's the best hope you're going to get there for any kind of HD version. Yeah,
I've seen some of those HD algorithms that do. Yeah, they don't look the greatest. They might work okay for animation, but I'm not too sold
as,
yet on
as I said, future. Hope that
Yeah.
there's something in the future, because there's nothing today, and they are not spending money on redoing that in HD. Let's see, not after the competitive failure with the next generation box sets. So
Well, that was their own fucking fault.
I'm not
but-
arguing that. But
Yeah, we're
still,
not going to get into all that. Like I said, we need to
Yeah.
have a long conversation with Robert Meyer Burnett, and maybe even Bill Hunt about that one of these days.
Yeah.
But speaking of super chats, we got a couple more coming real quick here. Mills, I think that's South African Rands.
That
right?
is indeed South African Rants, and he says, what happens with a non-compete if Kurtzman is not attached to future content? My understanding would be that then it's gone, because basically that whole non-compete thing, that was a product from when there were two different companies. That's no longer the case. So the contract that they still have is a leftover from that. But the moment that this contract expires, by way of either the date expiring or Secret Hideout being kicked out, whichever comes first, then that whole thing is null and void. Because
you've had two major shifts here.
Yeah.
You've had the remerger, and then you now have had CBS All Access being changed into Paramount Plus. And their regioning changing in certain things. So like I wish I had the contracts, we all do, but yeah, without them we can't say for sure. But I'm thinking that's the case, is they found a way out of it. That's just my guess.
Yeah, because basically that would be null and void with when the companies merged back into one. And then Angry Mango sent us
you skipped over one.
Oh, sorry about that. Carthen, the Klingon cleric, sent us $2 saying, in my opinion, Star Trek Online tells Trek better than CBS. Well, it doesn't take much these days.
Well, didn't that start before?
Yeah, it did. Basically, that's how they merged the basically their excuse for the prime timeline and everything was there.
In the Kelvin,
yeah.
Angry Mango sends in $5. That's the other one. Great roundtable, informative and entertainment. Thank you, gentlemen. Well, thank you, folks, for listening. We appreciate it. At one point, we had over 1.2 thousand people watching. If you can, on the way out, though, hit that thumbs up. If you want to check me out, I'm heading over to another stream. If you want to slide on over there and blow their mind and have a bunch of people show up, stream raid, that'd be great. Other than that, Andre, Rob, was there anything else you guys wanted to say before we checked out today? Or?
No, I just want to say thanks for absolutely everyone that's been here to watch us. We really like that, and we cannot do what we do without your support. Speaking of support, I hate to ask this of you, but we could use a little bit more of it. So everyone who is subscribed, please make sure that you are still subscribed, because YouTube has a way of doing these purges in taking out inactive users, and in so doing, they sometimes take out active ones from our subscribers.
I've gotten unsubscribed from this channel before.
Exactly. There you go. And also, so check notifications and make sure that you're still subscribed, that you still get notifications. When you do get notifications, then do click on them, because otherwise they will stop coming.
I don't know if it's a bug or if it's something that's specific, but sometimes if you don't have the notifications ticked on your phone, it won't have them ticked on when you go to watch it on a PC or on a Mac or whatever. So make sure to check that too. So
yeah.
All right. With that, I think that's as good a place as any to end this. I want to thank everybody here, and for Andre and Rob, please take care and have a